I caught my wife cheating and made her life a living nightmare. She was struck dumb when I forced her to expose an affair in front of everyone. She's pleading and crying with me not to destroy her life, but I forced her to do more. I'm 39 and my wife is 37. No kids, by choice. The long and short of it is that I am worried I'm letting my anger get control of me and my actions. The backstory: shady things and alibis. She was doing shady things. Staying out late, phone protection, etc. She stayed with a friend a couple times, and when confronted even told me to ask her friend. I did, and her friend corroborated. I had a gut feeling, but she always had reasons: blowing off steam, stress relief, etc. I finally snooped and caught her. One night she said she was drunk and staying at her friend's again. I drove the 40 minutes to her house and my wife wasn't there. Not that she left her car at the bar. No one at all was home. I started snooping, and I even stayed awake until 2 a.m. one night so I could get my hands on her phone. Recovery Plus enabled GPS tracking. Her affair with a married co-worker came to light immediately. I saved and sent all the info to myself. I was crushed by what I saw and read. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. I spent the next 24 hours just stewing and getting angry. She acted like everything was great between us, and then this crap. So on Sunday I confront her. I confront and am really harsh about my terms. I need to know if I went too far with boundaries and rules. I confront. I start by asking her if there is anything she needs to tell me. She says no. I tell her she has one chance. She needs to tell me everything, and keep in mind I know far more than you imagine. Anything less than total honesty and it's over. She calls my bluff and says no again. I just start walking away. She starts crying and confesses. It's the usual things I'm sure you all heard. Paid attention to her, things stagnated between us, it just kind of happened, etc. I listened to it all, and so far she's being honest and answering my questions. I ask her for her phone. She seems reluctant, but I again start to walk away and she relents. We continue to talk for another hour, and then when we are both down crying and talking, I tell her this. She's begging for a chance to reconcile. I tell her we can try, but she needs to do everything I ask. If she strays in any way, it's over. If she resists any of my demands, it's over. She agrees to everything. I make her tell the co-worker's wife in person. So that night I unplug the computer, I take the Wi-Fi, her phone, the iPod, anything that can be used to communicate with the outside world, and I lock it in my car with the spare set of keys. I also put her car keys in my car too. She's concerned and worried, but I tell her that if she wants her stuff back, just say so. I will give it back right away, but I'm also done with the attempt to reconcile. She relents on that ultimatum, which I had to use more later. Secure that I have given her no means of contacting anyone we try to sleep. It doesn't go well for me. I'm not sure if I slept at all. I'm sure she didn't either. I slept on the couch. In the morning I get her phone and tell her to call into work. I already called in before. I tell her that she and I are going to co-worker's house and telling his stay-at-home mother wife in person. This is when she really loses it. She's pleading and crying with me not to make her do this. I was so angry at her defending the other guy. I bawled my anger down and just said okay. The marriage is over. I'll find a lawyer, and you should too. This time she didn't relent, and I started looking up a lawyer on my phone. She was talking to me the whole time, but I ignored her. Only when I called one and was on the line did she finally relent. She was crying and very, very emotional. I started to feel bad and almost relented myself. But that familiar anger came back and I went through with it. We drove to his house together. We knocked on the door, and when the woman answered, my wife had to tell her. It was probably the stupidest decision I've made in all this. I don't wish having to see that kind of anguish on anyone. The guy's wife turned angry, and I just handed her all the printouts of their convos, and we left. My wife was crying her eyes out the whole way home, and was extremely upset. I made her tell her parents and siblings. Once we got home, she went to the bed and cried her eyes out. She couldn't even look at me. I just felt angry still. I was playing fantasies in my mind of them together. So the next step in my angry mind was to make her call her parents on speakerphone and admit to the affair. This was also extremely hard, and she also begged me to not make her. Once again, I simply said this or divorce. Her parents wanted to talk to me, but I told them we were talking things out, and if they could give us some space. Her siblings were actually more sympathetic to me than her parents. I made her end her relationship with the friend that provided cover. This time I did the talking. I yelled some which I'm not proud of. I also, while still on the phone, made it very clear that if my wife ever contacted her or responded to any contact from her, no matter how innocent or how long has passed, I would instantly divorce her. I made her agree to a new job and made a set of eyes at her workplace. We called a mutual friend that works with her. One that is more my friend than hers. I gave him a rundown of what happened and that I appreciate his support. My wife was really opposed to this for fear of the info getting out at work, but I needed to have someone at her job that would have my back while she still had to work there while she looked for a new job. This all occurred on that Monday. I think the reason she didn't fight much was that initial shock and all the emotional turmoil going on. The rest occurred over the next couple of weeks. For your information, I gave her phone back at the end of Monday and reestablished our internet. And of course her keys were returned. She voluntarily took the next couple of days off work, as did I. I made her do the following, which wasn't anything that I had to fight for. No contact with other men. No drinking. No bars, clubs, or any other social event without me. Transparency and access to everything. Write a letter and a timeline to me. Some of those are temporary and the length varied by each one. I still slip sometimes. It's been really rough and we are both kind of going through the motions. Sometimes we have a little fight over the next few weeks and I'll just snap, yeah? Well, at least I haven't eat anyone else's stuff. Every time I do, she feels terrible and cries, and I feel terrible and apologize. We have some bonding moments. But I'm not happy with the way I respond. It's like I don't even have time to think before the words are out of my mouth. Our mutual friend at her office tells me everyone knows and she's miserable. She hasn't found new employment yet, and our buddy tells me everyone knows. He swears he didn't say a word, so maybe the other man. Hey other man, I swear I'm smarts. He tells me my wife is an outcast. People always stare, and that she seems very miserable while at work. The other guy is no longer even there. He quit 1 week after we told his wife. I feel terrible because I could have handled this softer. Her family gives her a hard time, and in obsession to hearing it from me, she heard it from all them. Some days I feel like she deserved it, and some days I just feel so badly for her. I love her, and she's a shell of a human right now. Emotionally drained. Well, that fits her to a T right now. She has a glossy look in her eyes sometimes and just looks exhausted. She still cries and we have good days, but the more I think about what I did, and how I made her blow up her entire life to appease my bruised ego, makes me feel like crap some days. Oh, and during that first 2 weeks I was open to telling everyone. Hanging out with friends and she has a moment and goes to the bathroom crying. They ask what's wrong. I just told them. I busted her cheating. So a lot more people, including people that had no real right to know, also know. So I'm really torn. She's done some things wrong. Obviously. But she's done a lot of things right towards reconciliation. I see how much pain she's in, and I want to hold her and help and tell her I will make it better. Other days I think she deserved. I don't know what I'm asking. I know that if you asked me if I went too far, I would say yes. But it's done and I don't know how to make it right. I don't want to appear to be easing up in the idea of cheating being okay, but I want to let her know I hate how I acted. Edit to add, I haven't yet, but I am making her sign a post-nuptial that if she cheats again I get everything. Wife thought she'll get a promotion while was doing it with her boss. Instead she was thrown on the curb by him. We were both supposed to go to a party downtown that night and spend the night at a nearby hotel. Our babysitter became unavailable, and I needed to stay home with our kiddo, 5 years old. She decided that she would go alone and stay the night without me. Before she left for work that morning, I told her how uncomfortable I was with that. Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but my spider sense was tingling because of weirdness over the previous few days. She told me there was nothing to worry about, and that was that. I woke up with a start at 2:15 a.m. and a knot in the pit of my stomach. She'd recently turned off her phone location service, should have been a huge red flag, but I didn't actually think that much of it, but I checked it anyway. She'd turned it back on, and I could see she was at an apartment complex nowhere near the party location. She was there until 9 a.m. I confronted her when she got home, and after some half-hearted lies she stopped denying it. It was the first time, might have been some touching and or BJ earlier in the week, I'll never know, though it wasn't a drunken moment of weakness. She'd been thinking about it and planning for it for a couple of weeks. She knew what she was doing and obviously didn't care what it did to the family. Our marriage has had its ups and downs, and I've not always been the greatest husband. I've never been unfaithful though, and I love her dearly. Whatever issues we had, I think we could have worked through. From what I can piece together, I think she was looking for a quick escape from a husband and child that she felt were stifling her. It was a chance to have a different, more exciting life. Turns out that her ex-boss was really just looking for a little something on the side. He put her into a cab still in her evening gown, and made her make the 9 a.m. walk of shame back at her hotel by herself. Oops. After she finally admitted the infidelity to me, she told me that it had been a mistake, and she wanted to stay with me. There's a chance that her ex-boss would try to hire her at the new company he works for. She's really damn good at her job, and I suspect his motivations would be more that she would help make him look good rather than sexual. She's really not his type. I told her that there was no way that could happen. She couldn't be with me and work for the man she'd broken her vows with. I told her that she needed to call her ex-boss and tell him that they could never speak again, and I needed to hear her say the words to him. She resisted this fairly strongly. The new job, if it were to materialize, would be an important career boost for her. Turning it down would be a big sacrifice, so I understood some of the hesitation. She asked me for a day or two to think it through. She went over to her mother's house for a couple of hours, and when she came back told me that she'd decided to make the call and give up the career opportunity. What she didn't know was that because I get the phone bills, I have access to her call records. I could see that she'd talked to her boss for an hour while she was going to her mother's. I didn't mention that I knew this and had her call her boss. She told him that it had been a huge mistake, and that they needed to cut off all communications. He said that he understood and would honor her wishes. Pretty much exactly what I wanted to hear. Later, I asked her if she talked to her boss any since he put her in a cab back to her hotel. She said that she hadn't. I pressed her on this and she said, if you want the truth, I sent him a text just seeing how he was recovering from the party. I told her that I knew that this was a lie and I knew she'd talked to him before coming home from her mother's. I pressed her on what the hour-long call was about. She told me it was to talk about what she was going to call him about later with me, the breakup call. I realize, of course, that this made the whole breakup call a pile of nonsense. I told her that I thought she called him to see if there was any chance of a relationship. She denied, but couldn't otherwise explain what the hell they talked about for so long. Finally she let it slip that he'd said, you need to try to make it work with your husband. If not, then we'll see. So my instincts were right. She had to think about whether to turn down the possible career opportunity, because she had to figure out what her options were. If she could have the job and the fellow she was infatuated with, that would be her preference. Failing that, she decided she'd rather lose the job and be with her family than be alone, and maybe or maybe not get the job. For what it's worth, I eventually told her to accept the job if they offered it. I don't think he will though. Once he had sex with her, too much career risk from drama and fallout. That was all about a month ago. Since then, she's been the model wife. We're going to counseling, she's done everything that I've asked, she's put up with my various late-night talkathons, she doesn't complain when I don't let her sleep in our bedroom, and she's not made it about her much. She clearly wants things to work now, and I believe her when she says she wants to be with me. At the same time though, I'm still having difficulty just with the physical side of the infidelity, and I'm having a lot of trouble with being plan B. Part of it is my bruised ego, but a very large part is a concern that she wants our relationship now, but what happens in the future? I feel like she's accepted her life, and is now gung-ho about making the best of it. What happens down the road though? So, the question in front of me now is what to do. For the last month, I've been bouncing all over between just digging in and fixing things to thinking about asking her to leave. For what it's worth, if she leaves, the kiddo almost certainly stays with me. My work gives me the time and ability to be a stay-at-home dad, which is a role I enjoy. My inclination as a father is that I probably have to stay and try to make it work. Kids do best with a mommy and daddy who love and respect each other. If there's still even a remote chance of that happening for the long term, I don't think I can deny my son that chance. I'm hoping but not convinced that time will dull some of the raw emotion. Found out a strange subscription on my cheating partner's computer, and my jaw dropped when I saw who it was. Get ready for a long one. So about 2 years ago I, F34YRS, found out my BF, M35YRS, had been subscribing to X site for sharing photos of, for 6 months or so. One of the pages he subscribed to was a girl he had dated and slept with briefly, before we met. He had been messaging several different of accounts, and even asked one if she would consider making video with a fan. At the time we weren't havering regular closeness. Thus was an issue for me, and I had been asking if there was anything we could do to help, asked if he had any fantasies, or wanted to watch X movies etc. He just kept saying he was tired, there was no issue, and he wasn't into X movies. He was pretty vanilla on the bedroom front, so I kind of bought this story. This went on for about 3 months. I asked several times if anything was wrong, was there someone else etc. Then one night the urge came over me to look at his phone. Specifically his internet history, and boom, there it was, his only F account with all his subscriptions and DMs. I thought I was going to faint. I looked myself in the bathroom, and he asked if I had been looking at his phone. He obviously had unlocked it, and it was the first thing that appeared. We had a discussion and I asked to see his phone again, and go through everything, and he refused. He made a disclosure about childhood trauma and blamed this, saying he didn't know what was going on. I was hurt. Confused, furious. He had been cheating as far as I was concerned. He had lied and lied about it, and had at times borrowed small amounts of money from me, because his salary isn't great, but yet was spending money on this. His key line was he didn't think about what he was doing, and for a good while he said he didn't see it as cheating. Is it cheating? I consider it infidelity, as he lied about it, kept it a secret, and hello, he previously slept with one of the girls he was subscribed to and was messaging her. So anyhow, we worked things out, and he said he would go for counseling to deal with childhood trauma, and then we would go for couples counseling. He did a few sessions but never really committed, and the couples counseling was put on hold until he sorted his stuff out. He said he couldn't do both, he needed to focus on his stuff first. In the meantime, we bought a house. Things were improving and I was beginning to trust him again, and it was a now or never moment. It initially felt great. Until last summer, a little over a year after I last confronted him, I discovered he was secretly watching X movies. Again, closeness had faded and I felt he was just not being upfront about things, so I started asking if there was anything going on. Eventually, after a few weeks, he admitted he was watching X movies, but not via of. Oh well. That's fine, but I wish you would have told me, we could have watched together maybe. But no. It wasn't just X movies. He was also visiting his ex's Twitter and other online accounts to look at her pics. These pages promote her of account, so the posts are very explicit, but still he wasn't visiting her of account. In his mind this was a great thing, he had stayed away from of like he said he would. So what's my problem? At least that's what it felt like his attitude was. I lost it. I just gave up inside. I can't bear the lying. I hate that I've to almost force the truth out of him over a prolonged period. It's so emotionally draining. Typically then he will bring up the childhood trauma, and I'm forced to put my feelings on hold cause he can't deal with anything else. He has also said he was thinking about ending life a lot. So I said fine. I told him, "You get your counseling, and we will then reassess, maybe do couples counseling." So for the last 4 months or so, he did get counseling for himself. I've no idea how it went really. He doesn't share that with me. When I try to talk to him, I'm told it's not the time, he's not able, etc. His own counseling has recently concluded, and we are meant to be trying couples counseling in the next 4 weeks. At this point, I feel done. If we didn't have a house together, I would have left him, I think. My self-confidence has taken a serious dive as a result of his actions, and I probably need my own counseling, but I've been so busy with my job and the house renovations I haven't had time to book therapy for me. I think I'm also afraid that if I stop to think about it all, I will fall apart. I can't afford that right now. I love this guy. I saw a future together, and I feel like he has ripped my heart out and stomped all over it, twice. I feel like I can't believe him, and he knows it. I think he is still visiting her sites, etc., I don't know for sure. He also has some health issues, hernia or something similar, so there's no closeness. It is really hard for me. We have a good friendship. Like we cohabit successfully, probably because we don't have meaningful conversations anymore. But then when we have to go to something as a couple, I am just filled with hurt and rage and jealousy, and it's awful. I know I'm not perfect, but before the first betrayal, I was loving and caring, and I was adventurous in the bedroom. I was the one that felt like it wasn't frequent enough, or was frustrated by how vanilla he was. I felt like I could trust him, and I never felt insecure in our relationship prior to the first discovery. It was such a lovely relationship, I felt we could talk honestly, and we had shared values. Since the second discovery, I feel so empty, when I'm not filled with doubt and rage. I feel tricked. He was so devious in trying to cover his lies the second time around, and has continuously lied to me. I don't trust him anymore, and I don't like how I'll feel when we go somewhere as a couple. The house renovation is still ongoing, and I feel he is hanging on until that's done. There's an element of a martyr with him almost, when we talk of splitting. He might say he will stay on and finish the house renovations for me, and then go away. I feel sometimes away is code for ending. The house is a bit complicated as he did not have great savings, so I put down the deposit for the house. He splits the mortgage payments. Typing this, I seeing loads of red flags, and I feel I was so stupid and gullible. I'm going to go to couples counseling in the hopes that I might get some answers, or at least it might assist with a civilized breakup. I feel that he still thinks what he did wasn't cheating. He didn't physically meet or sleep with someone else. I feel it is cheating. I ghosted my cheating wife, who was begging me to forgive her after she did it with her ex just because it was once. The wound is still fresh as this happened Memorial Day weekend, and I found out about it just 2 days ago. Be warned, this may be a bit on the long side. My friend I'm currently crashing on the couch have directed me to this sub as a place to vent and get insight on my situation. My wife Mary and I have been together 6 years, married for 4 of them. We met at the tail end of our time in college. She had months prior gotten out of a relationship, whereas I have never been in an actual relationship to that point. I was a player, or a duck boy as they call them these days. I admit that in my later teens, well into my 20s before I met her, I played the field. When we started dating officially, she knew well of my body count because a couple of associates were among the numbers. She's only had 2 sexual partners aside from me, the guy she dated in college for 2 years before she met me, and her HS boyfriend Nate, who happens to be the guy she cheated on me with. I'll spare you the life story of our marriage. We have no kids. We both are professionals and live in an apartment here in New York. There have been 0 hiccups in our relationship. Just the usual spats married couples have. There's been no lack of intimacy, affection, or communication. This is why I'm so absolutely blindsided by this. The last couple of weeks Mary had been acting strange. She was being a lot more clingy and lovey-dovey with me than normal. She's always been an attentive woman, but it felt like she was going out of her way the last couple weeks. And it also seemed as if there was something eating her up inside, but when I asked if something was wrong she'd say it was nothing. I now know that it was anything but nothing. 2 days ago, Mary comes to me as I'm doing my evening workout and says she has something to tell me. I ask what, and she drops a nuke on me. She had sex with Nate at her parents' Memorial Day shindig in her hometown, Metuchen, New Jersey. They have this event every year, and this year I was unable to go because I had other obligations to tend to regarding my business. Turns out Nate had returned to the East Coast after being over in Japan for decades. From what she's told me about Nate, he was a military baby, and the reason they broke up is because his father ended up on a 4-year deployment to Okinawa. This was told to me early in our relationship. Nate apparently stayed in Japan for years after, and has recently returned to the US. Long story short, as she says, there was alcohol and lots of conversation of the old times. Old feelings flared up, and by evening's end she ended up back at his place where they had sex. I'm usually a calm, level-headed guy, but I admit I lost my crap. It took all I could muster not to throw her out of a window. I cursed her 50 ways to Sunday and stormed out of our apartment. I didn't even bother packing anything, I just left. She tried to beg and plead for me not to go, and made an attempt to block my way to the door, but I shoved her out of the way and slammed the door behind me. In hindsight, I know that's probably going to cost me, but it is what it is. Like I said, this went down 2 days ago, and I'm presently typing this from my friend's apartment. She knows I'm here, as my friend had returned to my apartment to gather some things for me. I've completely cut contact with her, as I'm in no mental state to hear anything she has to say. So Reddit, is my marriage over? I love her with every ounce of my soul. I'd go through hell and high water for her. But this? I can't shake this. To her credit, she at least admitted to cheating on her own accord, but to all of a sudden have tingles for your first boyfriend and duck him the first day you reunite with him. Is this karma for me being a womanizer when I was young? I'm just lost, confused, hurt, and angry right now. How do I cope with this? ETA, there's a lot of comments that have been made that I don't think I'll be able to respond to all, but I want to clear up a couple of the major points. First off, regarding a post-nupt, I made that comment not in a right frame of mind. In all likelihood, it won't be needed. While my state of New York is notoriously bad for men regarding divorce, if in fact I do decide to go that route, I know Mary will not take me to the cleaners. Despite what a lot of you may think of her given the circumstances, she is not a vindictive or spiteful woman. I know a lot of you are going to fight me on that, but she's not. The next thing I want to address is the idea that this was premeditated. Today, I went over the data records on my cell phone plan, and I can confirm that the first time they communicated May 27th, 2 days before the event. There is zero communication between the two before that point, and a few texts from Nate following, that Mary never responded to. The last time he attempted to reach her was June 10th. So you can take the theory that they planned this months in advance, or have been hooking up for months and throw it out of the window. Lastly, I've taken the time over the last day to think to myself with insight from my friend what I should do next, and the next immediate move I've decided to make on the matter is get time away from all of this. I need to sort things out, so I'm taking a step back from interactions, including social media. I will post an update once I've sourced things out. To everyone who has given me good, solid advice, I thank you. For everyone who has projected their own misgivings and toxicity of their own circumstances upon my situation, maybe you need to disconnect from social media as well.